Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're getting into something I think everyone has felt, something that's frustrating and anxiety-inducing and just deeply human. I want you to picture this. You're getting ready for something important, a big interview, a first date. Maybe you're about to meet a new boss for the first time.
The stakes feel really high.
Exactly. So you look in the mirror, you do that last-minute check, and your shirt is fine, your hair is mostly cooperating, you look presentable, but what does your brain actually see?
It doesn't see the whole picture.
Not at all. It just zooms in on the one tiny flaw. The pimple you thought was healing, the dark circles under your eyes, that one weird strand of hair that will not stay down.
And suddenly that's all you can see.
It's everything. Your brain just screams, they're gonna notice that, and that's all they'll remember. So today we're gonna unpack that. We've got a great set of sources that pull from psychology, evolution, cognitive science, and we're really tackling two huge questions. First, why are we so wired to focus on flaws instead of the good stuff? And second, why does that first meeting, that first impression, seem to lock in how people see us, even if it's, totally wrong?
And what's so fascinating is that this isn't about being vain or judgmental. It's much, much older than that. This is a survival mechanism. It's a biological relic.
A relic. Yeah.
Your brain is using these ancient cognitive shortcuts to save energy. It's a mix of vigilance, this deep-seated fear of being rejected by the group, and just a powerful biological memory. We are literally built to see the risk first, and a flaw always signals risk.
The sources give this great analogy for it, the scratched mirror. You can be looking at this big, beautiful mirror, but your eye goes straight to the scratch.
Every single time.
It doesn't matter what the reflection looks like. The scratch is the deviation. It's the thing that's wrong. And that's how we see ourselves and, well, how others see us. So let's start with the biology. Because once you understand that, everything else kind of falls into place.
Yeah.
Why on earth did our ancestors need to be so obsessed with flaws?
It was about survival, pure and simple. I mean, if you go way back to the primal forests, your brain had one job.
Don't get eaten.
Basically. And the ancestor who was busy admiring the beautiful sunset or the pretty flowers, well, that's when it probably became lunch.
Right.
Survival depended on spotting the deviation. The broken twig that shouldn't be broken, the weird rustle in the bushes, a berry that was just a slightly different color, maybe it's poison.
So you had to be a professional flaw finder.
Exactly. The ability to spot the abnormality, the thing that was out of place, that's what kept you alive long enough to pass on your genes. The brain's main job became flaw detection, not, compliment giving.
And that system, that intense vigilance, it didn't just go away when we built cities.
No, it just found new targets. We're not looking for a tiger's footprint anymore, but we're using the exact same mental hardware to scan for flaws in a job applicant, or in a new colleague, or in the mirror.
To avoid social dangers now instead of physical ones.
That's the key. The danger is social now rejection, misunderstanding. And this explains the negativity bias we always hear about. A negative comment sticks with you for days, but a compliment disappears in an hour.
Because the negative thing is a potential threat. It demands action.
Right. Praise is nice, but you don't have to do anything about it. But a flaw, a mistake that sets off the alarm, it signals a potential cost, so it gets all the attention.
It's kind of depressing to think our instinct to find fault in things is just a leftover from trying not to be eaten. One mistake matters more than 10 things done right.
And in the modern world, this flaw-seeking instinct gets amplified by just how fast everything moves. A flaw isn't just a mistake anymore. In our competitive world, it's a signal.
Let's talk about how that plays out in, say, an office setting. The sources had some really clear examples of this.
They did. Think about a 50-page report. 49 of those pages are brilliant, perfectly researched. But there's one typo on page 17.
That's what your boss will remember.
That's the thing they'll bring up. Because the typo signals a lack of care, a flaw in the process. Or think about presentation. You could speak smoothly for an hour, but people will remember the one time you stuttered or had that awkward pause.
Because the good parts are just expected. They're background noise. The mistake is the data.
It's the actionable data point. And once that mistake is spotted, the brain moves so fast. This is where that idea of the frame comes in. That one defect is enough for the brain to create a quick, fixed story.
A story like, this person isn't confident, or this person doesn't pay attention to detail.
And that's the trap, because of what psychologists call the confirmation mechanism. Your brain wants to save energy. It's much easier to make a snap judgment and then just look for evidence that confirms it. rather than constantly reevaluating someone.
So you're not even trying to be accurate anymore. You're just trying to be consistent with your first guess.
Precisely. If you seem a little nervous in the first minute, the observer's brain logs you as a shy person. Later, when you relax and act confidently, they don't see that as your true self. They see it as the relaxed version of a shy person.
You're always being seen through that initial flawed filter.
And research shows it takes less than a second to form that filter.
Yeah.
We become prisoners of our most stressed out moments, and it has almost nothing to do with who we actually are.
That is so frustrating, to be judged by the least authentic version of yourself just to save someone else a little bit of brain power. So if we're all just walking around with this ancient wiring, making these cognitive shortcuts, what is that actually doing to us on the inside, emotionally?
Well, this is where it gets really painful. The core issue is this deep existential fear of exposure. It's not just about fitting in. It's this primal terror that if people saw the real, complete, messy you with all the flaws and insecurities, they'd reject you.
So we try to hide it.
We try to present this curated, perfect version of ourselves. And that brings us back to the scratched mirror, but it's more complicated. We each carry our own internal mirror, one that's already scratched up with our past failures and criticisms. Okay. So when we meet someone, we're looking at them through our scratch mirror, and they're looking back at us through theirs. The whole meeting becomes a clash of two damaged mirrors.
Wow, that's a powerful way of putting it. So neither of us is seeing reality. We're both just seeing distorted reflections.
Profoundly distorted.
Yeah.
And here's the paradox, the tragic part. In our desperate attempt to seem perfect and avoid being judged, we become tense and unnatural.
And that tension itself becomes the biggest flaw they see.
Exactly. The very effort you put into controlling the impression is what creates the awkwardness that leads to the negative judgment you were trying to avoid in the first place.
So our first encounter often shows our most anxious, defensive self, not our base self.
We literally project our fear of being seen, and that fear becomes the very defect the other person's brain latches onto.
And living like that, constantly feeling like you're under a microscope, that has to take a serious toll.
It's exhausting.
Right.
It takes a huge personal toll.
So you end up with this chronic feeling of being misunderstood, because people's idea of you is based on this one brief, stressed out moment. What does that do to you psychologically over time?
Well, the first thing is self-depreciation. You start to believe their flawed judgment. You replay that one awkward moment in your head for days. That external judgment becomes a permanent scratch on your own internal mirror.
That sounds familiar.
And that leads to chronic fatigue. You're going into every social situation like it's a battle, constantly monitoring every word, every gesture. You're not tired from your work, you're tired from the constant performance.
And the sources point to something even more serious, right? Identity distortion.
Yes, and this is the gravest impact. If you're repeatedly judged as shy or uninteresting, even if it's based on nothing, you can start to internalize it. You start to act that way. You lose the ability to be your spontaneous self because you're too busy living up to someone else's flawed first impression.
You become a product of their mistake.
You do.
Yeah.
And the final irony is that the other person is probably just as worried about what you think of them. We're both stuck in this exhausting cycle of fear based on completely misreading each other.
Okay, so we can't just rewire our evolution overnight, and society isn't going to slow down. So what can we actually do about this? How do we break free?
The whole strategy has to be about shifting your focus inward. It's about internal control. The first step is to separate yourself from their image of you.
What do you mean by that?
You have to consciously recognize that a first impression is just a blurry, flawed snapshot of you in a moment of stress. It is not the final verdict on who you are. The scratch is not the whole mirror.
That's a great way to think about it. But it's hard to just be authentic when you know that authenticity might just look like visible anxiety.
That's a really sharp point. And the answer is subtle. The goal is to appear authentically, not over-edited. Stop trying to manage every tiny detail. The visible tension from trying to be perfect is almost always a bigger perceived flaw than a natural imperfection, like tripping over a word.
So clumsy authenticity is better than a strained performance.
Much better. It signals a kind of self-confidence. The third strategy is to observe without judgment. Shift your focus. Instead of thinking, what are they thinking of me? Just ask, what is happening right now?
Get out of your own head.
Right. When you release your brain from defense mode, you naturally appear calmer.
But what about those frames people put you in? How do you change someone's mind once they've made that snap judgment?
You have to accept that time is the only corrector. The only way to fix a false initial frame is with consistency. Smart people will eventually see the difference between their first impression and the reality of who you are.
And if they don't?
Then they've shown you that their cognitive shortcut is more important to them than the truth. And maybe that person isn't worth the effort.
That's fair. What's the final strategy?
The final one is the most important. Change your own mirror. You can't stop other people from looking at you through their scratched mirror. But you absolutely can and must stop using a scratched mirror to judge yourself.
Choose to see the whole picture in yourself. Your progress, your resilience, not just the one flaw you're worried about.
That's it. That's where the freedom is.
So this whole deep dive, it's really shown us how unfair this whole process is. We've gone from, our brains trying to survive in the forest to the energy-saving shortcuts of social judgment, and finally to the personal cost of it all.
And I think the big takeaway, the liberation, is just recognizing that all human judgment is flawed from the start. Understanding the mechanism should give you permission to just breathe. You are not defined by those first few minutes. You're not defined by one flaw.
The freedom really starts when you decide to reject someone else's flawed assessment. You get to decide what your reflection actually looks like.
So we'll leave you with that final challenge from the source material. In a world that is so busy looking for the scratch, can you be the person who decides to see the entire mirror? In others, and most importantly, in yourself.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.